everybody, this is Chen,
I'm Christine.
and we're very excited here to share with you about this week's discussion on
Psychosocial aspects.
yes, and how social media is affecting our lives, both subconsciously and consciously through psychology. So this week's first reading was by Valkenberg on friends networking sites and their relationships to adolescents' well-being and social self-esteem. So social media may have impacted our lives more than what we thought after I read this, because basically this research aimed to show the consequences of friend networking sites, Facebook or Instagram, and how it is really affecting our self-esteem and well-being. And this also, reminds me of the famous words now, like Facebook depression along together, because the sense of like sharing on Facebook, Instagram needs, to me, I really think of it needs to have a degree of limit, because psychologically speaking, if one is focusing too much on what to share on Instagram, could lead to a failure of concentrating on real life, and further leads to mental issues of narcissism or like depression, which we will further analyze about these readings, which has covered this topic as well.
Yeah, so what really stood out to me was that in the Valkenberg article, it said adolescent self-esteem was affected solely by the tone of the feedback that adolescents received on their profiles. So positive feedback enhance their self-esteem, and negative feedback decrease their self-esteem. But the number of friendships and romantic relationships formed through this site didn't actually affect their social self-esteem. So obviously it wasn't, the sheer number of relationships formed on the site that affected their self-esteem, but, a lot of what did was the commentary that they got, the feedback that they got, that really, kind of put them down or put them up. So what's always so interesting to me is how the dynamics change between physical presence and online presence, and a lot of the communication that takes place in person is actually very superficial, because we have this set of standards and rules that society and culture has created, and people generally expect to be somewhat courteous most of the time in real life, but when we're hiding behind a computer screen, our true colors come out. So what's interesting to me is that I think people don't realize that the people you interact with in person are actually just as capable of being as cruel as the behavior of the people you see online. So sometimes people think, oh, there are a lot of really mean, cruel people on the internet, but really these are your everyday normal people that you see everywhere. But because there is more anonymity online, you're hiding behind a screen, people don't exactly know who you are, can't really point you out in real life, then they feel more capable of showing that ugly side to people.
Yeah, as you can see, we're both quite concerned about a lot of the negative effect, like psychological effect on a lot of social medias, and which I'm very happy to introduce our second reading, which is on the psychological benefits for women that's fighting with breast cancer. It's a perfect example. Like, it shows the positive psychological benefits of internet community groups, how their participation is encouraging the people that are in need of help, and both psychologically, and they can help, as it mentioned, NGOs to participate, and more groups that might not be the stakeholders, but to try to really engage in this kind of problems. And that's really positive side effects of this kind of engagement on social media. And this reminds me of about like 2 or 3 years ago, about the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, which was a tremendous event for the association in its history. I think it raised about 100 million just the summer of 2014, and it brings awareness. Like, I did not
support and awareness to that.
Yeah. Right, I did not know that much about the ALS before, but after I watched like David Beckham's Instagram, I learned a lot about it, and so it really increased the awareness, attention, to those like devastating disease, and it's important as well, because it can hugely increase the budget to these researchers
Yeah.
and increase
Yeah.
the budget to just give them support emotionally and also financially.
Yeah. So with the Rogers and Chen reading, what was interesting to me about this was, unlike other platforms, with with something like in medicine or with your health and well-being, that there was actually a lot of psychosocial benefits, which a lot of people were giving information, a lot of people were giving social support. There was a lot of optimism on the platform, and it helped people increase their skills and ability to cope with the disease, the sickness. People had an improvement in mood just by communicating with others on this platform. There was a decrease in psychological stress, better coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So over time, it was just this positive shift that was shown in women's effect toward the breast cancer and online community. Right. And so there was a positive correlation that was found between the amount of participation and psychosocial well-being. And with something like breast cancer, it is huge. We see so much about it in small businesses and big businesses. There's a lot of awareness around it. There's a lot of products that people sell to consumers that's related to breast cancer awareness. There's a lot of parades and marches around it. So I think what really connects people together is hardship, and especially common hardship. So when it comes to something like cancer, people are going to naturally bond with others who have been through the same complications and sufferings. And I think social networking forums and sites are an amazing outlet for these people with these common backgrounds to join each other and form a supportive community.
Yeah.
So moving on to our third article, the Pelly and White article. The biggest thing that they're finding was self-identity. If a person self-identifies as being a social networking site user, then they're also going to have a bigger intention to engage in social networking sites. So, but they also showed that the need for belongingness with others doesn't really play a role in predicting their intention to engage in high-level social networking usage. So it's possible that by interacting online, it might not meet the user's need for their belongingness compared to face-to-face communication. And I hate to admit this reality, but it's definitely something that has plagued our lives today. Everyone is so consumed and occupied with their online profile and reputation, which they consider a representation of who they are in society and how they want to be classified. I think this is definitely very dangerous and harmful to our well-being if we become so focused on achieving this social media image and neglect to just be in the moment.
Right.
I think belongingness is still achieved through face-to-face interaction, and I think it's hard to consider online interaction as real and fulfilling.
Yeah, so like the users post photos and create images that they would like the followers to see, and this may generate a lot of social psychological paranoia when one is largely reliant on social media because of the sense of comparing your life with the others on social media, and the paranoia could also lead to depression and other related mental health issues. But I also think it could psychologically benefit the community greatly as well, because it helps us to maintain relationships easily, even create like business opportunities, actually a lot of them, and it helps you to reach new audiences, like it build up new communities, and it prevent psychological loneliness and encourage aspiration, motivation, and there are positivities, a lot of them psychologically in our lives from social media. So I think the applications and the social media itself is ethically neutral, but how the users are using it will lead to either positive or negative psychological effect and outcomes.
Yeah, so I think this kind of brings us to our last article. In the Yu and John article, they said that the groups that had used SNS had a stronger need for communication compared to non-users, and among those who had fear or anxiety regarding face-to-face communication, they were more comfortable using social networking sites to get their need for interpersonal relationships and avoid the tension that they would have in face-to-face situations. Another big thing is the idea of Facebook depression that we mentioned is, when you're looking at posts from other people and, you tend to feel like you're missing out, this fear of missing out. You tend to feel like other people are engaged in all of these activities and you're not. But that kind of gives you a distorted view of what's going on, a distorted view of how you should live your life. So I kind of have an issue with this because I think the more usage of social networking sites will only lead to more fear of face-to-face interaction. So even though it's a good option to say opt for going online, but I think if you continue to do that, you're only going to become more fearful of engaging in real life conversation.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to discuss about how we're feeling when we are seeing others' posts and the sense of missing out, and is the likes actually meaning what's how much it weighs, and so it is an ethical concern as well, I think. So it's that sense of rapid and photo sending that instill the habit of us, I think, to some extent learning insufficiently about either people's lives or like even knowledge, like basic life knowledge. It's I feel like it's kind of like adapting to shallow information and losing our ability of daily reflective analysis. Again, I mentioned to Facebook likes. So a comedian, actually, it's called, his name was Zach Bouchard, and he conducted a social experiment, the understanding of seriousness of when people are clicking likes on Facebook. So the experiments was like, despite he's having a continuously posting his photos with his long-term girlfriend over the years, Zach has hired a model for a fake engagement shoot. So he proposed he posted a photo of himself proposing to the model and receiving like thousands of likes, but no one was willing to, not like no one, but
to check
really,
whether or not that was real.
Right. So rarely a lot of like followers that he thought was like great friends or like good fans failed to noticing that girl in the photo isn't
like not
his actual girlfriend. So it's really like the rapid clicking on likes and the sharing. These buttons really, it's kind of a fairly thoughtless action, to some extent, while it has so much psychological influence over it. So I feel like while we are all trying to get likes and prove that we receive attentions from the others, we really need to also take into aspects of how much it actually weighs and what is the value and the content inside of the likes. So I really enjoyed this week's reading psychological analysis with social media.
Another point I wanted to mention was they found that there was positive correlations between the intensity of Facebook use and life satisfaction, social trust, and civil engagement among college students, but there was no significant relationship between social networking site use and their psychosocial well-being factors. And I think as long as we remain physical beings, social networking site isn't really going to provide happiness or necessarily encourage loneliness or have anything to do with life satisfaction. I also dependent if you view your self-identity as completely of what your presence is online. So that's also another thing. So I think just mentioning the fear of missing out phenomenon, I think I definitely relate to this. I think we're so quick to make conclusions and judgments about other people's lives, and we assume that their constant posts are an indication of their lively well-being or exciting and happy lives. But we forget to realize that isn't necessarily true, like what you mentioned. And like what we see from the end of the technology or platform is really just a type of branding.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we want to cover for this week's seed video. with the readings of psychosocial aspects. So thank you.
And we hope you enjoyed it.